This podcast is supported in part by Stringjoy strings. I'm a snob, at least that's what people tell me. I'm never okay with good enough, and that's where Stringjoy strings come in. They're better than good enough. They're the best. Stringjoy are making some of the finest strings available today right up the road from me in Nashville, Tennessee. They offer custom sets, balanced tension, coated strings, the works. If you need it, they can probably make it happen. You should be using Stringjoy strings, and if you're going to order from them, you really could help this podcast out by clicking the affiliate link down in the description or show notes below. You get amazing strings, I get a little bit of that back to help the show keep going. It's a win-win situation. Get your Stringjoy strings today. Hey y'all, got another episode of the podcast this week, but before we get started, I need to talk about a couple of things so that y'all know what's going on. First of all, I had a great time talking to Rhett on this week's episode. We talk all about Fretboard Summit. We get super into the things we saw, the things we loved, and y'all, it's just a conversation where we get really, really nerdy, and we're really excited, and we're really excited about this event. I've already bought my tickets for next year. It's going to be a great event. But before we go into this, first of all, let's talk about a couple of things. Rhett and I had such a good time talking while not recording that we ran out of time. So Patreon supporters, I'm very sorry there's no Patreon episode this week. I really wish we could have, but there was no way to make it work. We both got super busy the rest of the week and weren't able to make it happen. I appreciate your support. Your support absolutely means the world to me. I can't do this without y'all. So, y'all have already heard the spiel about Patreon. Y'all hear about it all the time. It's the best way you can support and help make sure this podcast keeps happening. Want to thank the newest members of the Patreon. The newest members are Jacob McDougall, Nicholas Lombardo, and Matthew Gill. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for joining the team and making sure this keeps happening. Now, if you're like, hey, Philip, I like the podcast, but I really can't spare the money this month or any month, I totally understand. You can help support this podcast by rating, reviewing, liking, subscribing, sharing with friends. Every little bit helps to keep the podcast going and share it with everyone else around. Also want to thank the sponsors of this podcast. We have a couple that I'm really excited to work with. We have Barry over at Grez Guitars, who's unveiled his new Grand Tour model. I've been telling y'all for weeks that we've been brewing something together. This is a guitar I've wanted for a long, long time. The one that Barry took to Fretboard Summit is mine. I've been pushing Barry to make this guitar, and that's it. That was my contribution. Some aesthetic and electronics things I wanted. But Barry's the magic maker over here, and he's made this incredible guitar that I had such a great time playing, and I can't wait till it gets to come home and live with me, but it isn't here yet. So go check Barry over on Instagram, check out the website, order a guitar. I love his guitars. I think he's making some of the best guitars out there. We've also got Mark at Summer School Electronics, who's making some of the coolest pedals. And Mark's just a rad dude. Some of the sounds aren't mine. They're not my thing. Mark's got this great ear for these sounds that are like, grunge and 90s inspired, and they're really good, but he also has some other things. His Snow Day Delay is so good. I've got the Class Reunion. I've got the, what's the other one I have? It's over here somewhere. I have the Class Reunion, the Science Fair. I also have one that I can't talk about yet. It's coming out soon, though. There'll be a video. Anyway, I'm going to stop here. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for hanging out, and I hope you enjoyed this episode with Rhett. Hello, 40 Watters. Welcome to another episode of 40 Watt Podcast. We are back again. It is finally, I know by date it's not actually the end of summer, but it is the end of my busy period. So we're back. You're going to see a whole lot more of me in the coming weeks. Got a bunch of ideas for videos that are going to be coming out soon. We're going to be really, really shaking some things up, trying to make some content for y'all and hang out. But in the meantime, you already know, you read the title of this podcast. You know what's going on. This week, I have got, who needs no introduction, the second most listened to episode I've ever done, Rhett Shull. How are you, Rhett?
Good, man. So we use the same podcasting service here, and as soon as I saw that countdown, I reflex almost went into, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Dipped in Tone. I'm Rhett. waiting for Zach to say he's Zach. So
Yeah. You get into a flow. You get used to it. It's a habit.
well, we filmed today, actually. Like, this is my second time on this service because we had Charlie Starr on today from Blackberry Smoke. And so we spent like an hour on the phone, quote unquote, with him. Phone. And yeah, good to be here, man.
Yeah. I love Blackberry Smoke. I'm really excited about that episode.
They're the best, man.
Yeah. He seems like such a cool dude. I watched his video he did with Gibson about his collection of guitars, and it's basically just one Les Paul Jr. after another. And I love
Charlie has he's got a type, and you know, he knows it. Super sweet guy though, a fellow Atlantan. Shout out, you know, like and a lifelong. I mean, those boys are all from, you know, Georgia, from the Atlanta area. And, you know, he stuck around here, which is really nice because with us being so close to Nashville, there's like this Atlanta to Nashville pipeline that happens with a lot of players, which, you know, has sucked me in a few times and whatever. But it's nice to see people that are sticking around here and repping Atlanta. And there's more people that are kind of like, we were just talking about this before we went live, but Atlanta is like kind of shaping up to be a scene here, I think, in the next 5 years. Like, there's people moving to town that are some heavy hitters. There's other like up and comers that are moving to town for various reasons. Like, it's a vibe down here.
And we talked about that off air, and while that isn't really the theme of today, but it is worth mentioning. We talked about that. The thing about Atlanta is it has the history of being a music town already. It's like people are rediscovering the fact that there's this whole thing down here. It's rock pedigree, it's hip hop pedigree, it's not to mention the whole. I mean, you can decide where the whole Southern Soul thing started, but you can't deny that it's absolutely just permeates the water in Georgia. So
I mean, I grew up here. I've lived here since I was 8 years old. Yeah. Originally, we're from South Carolina, but I say I'm from the Atlanta area. Mm-hmm. When you look at Georgia and Georgia's contribution to American music over the last 100 years, like it goes deeper than you might think, because you also shouldn't discount Athens, Georgia, which is kind of like east Atlanta. It's like an hour and 20 minutes east of Atlanta. You know, UGA's there, but REM, the B-52s, the Future Birds, like the music scene in Athens is insane. There's a number of really cool, really vibey recording studios there. I mean, people are sleeping on Atlanta, and I probably shouldn't say that because I don't want this to become like a thing of like, oh, you know.
Well, all you need is Cosmo to run one article saying that Atlanta is the new bridesmaid party capital of the USA, and then it'll be ruined. Man,
the thing is, Atlanta has been a big city for a long time, and it has the infrastructure, it has everything. Like, Nashville is bursting at the seams because Nashville is a small town. It can't support the growth that they're seeing right now and have been seeing for the last few years.
That's why the real estate has gotten so out of hand there, because there's not enough of it.
Yeah, exactly. And Atlanta is like, it's still slept on, man. You know, it's the capital of the South. It's the LA of the South. I mean, yeah, we're sticking around here for a little while, I think.
Yeah, I know at one point you were sort of mulling the whole possibility of a move to Nashville, and like, you finally, I don't remember when it was, but I remember there was sort of like this, wait a minute, why am I even considering moving?
Yeah, I mean, well, so for the last 8 years, I've been going to Nashville a lot. You know, before the pandemic, I had a gig there and I was commuting every week. And we realistically would have moved up then, but my wife was in school here in Atlanta full time and we just couldn't afford it. You know, it was like to transfer schools and out of state tuition and everything. So it kept us in Georgia. We got married and everything. And I'm actually really grateful for that now because we didn't make the move. And the transition that I've seen Nashville go through over the last 2 or 3 years, it's the same thing that's happening in Austin, which is like, Austin is a beautiful, amazing city full of really cool people, amazing musicians and artists and everything. It has a history of music and art, but there's so much tech and all these other industries moving in because it's such a cool city that the people that make it a cool city can't afford to live there anymore.
Right.
And it's ceasing to be a cool city because you're pushing all of the cool, artistic, creative people out. And from what I have seen, my uninformed armchair opinion is the same thing's happening in Nashville, where it's like, you know, we have a bunch of friends, we have a community of people up there, and it's like, man, it's getting expensive and people are moving out to get out of the, you know, the city. And I don't know.
So when I lived in Murfreesboro for a couple of years back in 02 to 04. And Murfreesboro was a town of like 60,000 people, 75,000 people, maybe. I don't remember. It was under 100 by a significant margin. Now it's massive because everyone started moving into East Nashville because that's where the people who make Nashville cool could afford to live. Well, guess what? Now that's, you can't afford to live there. People are going further east. Now they're into Murfreesboro and even further out.
Yeah, they're going out to, Madison and or Donaldson or Murfreesboro or Henderson or whatever, and people are just kind of moving out. And and there's nothing wrong with that. It is what it is, But when I look at Atlanta, I grew up here, so I have kind of a jaded view of it. And it's been talking to some friends of mine that have spent time here in Atlanta with us, that are from other places, that are like, man, I think you're chasing a dragon. Like, I think the thing that you want out of a place like Nashville or LA, you actually have here. You kind of need to, it's a grass is greener sort of situation.
Yeah.
And again, in the last probably year and a half, there's been some people that have moved back to Atlanta that are from here, that have built really established careers as artists and musicians, that have spent years in LA and New York and whatever, that have moved back here, that I've spent time with, and talking to them. I'm like, well, hold on. So you were in LA, you were doing the thing at the highest level. Like, what brought you back here? And when you hear their reasoning behind it, it's kind of like, oh yeah, you're right. This has everything that you need. Plus our airport.
The busiest airport in the world. But dude, so the thing about that airport, and I'm gonna preempt you here a little, because a lot of people talk about that airport and talk about hate going through it. Yes, it's super busy, it's super big, but I dare you to compare it to an airport a third of the size. Look at like a Dallas airport or Las Vegas airport. I hate both of those, by the way, so much. I have never had a problem getting from one end of the Atlanta airport to the other in a very short period of time. Yeah, I've never had issue getting. I've been on the back of planes because that's where I fly because it's cheap. I've waited for every mother freaking person to get off the plane, to get off the plane and have to go, from D terminal to D gate to freaking A gate, and have to make a 20-minute layover and still make it. Because let me
defend Hartsfield Jackson here, because I see it a lot online. I see people on threads complaining about the Atlanta airport. And I think a lot of the hate comes from the fact that, frankly, you're from a smaller town with a smaller airport and you're scared of it, which I understand. Atlanta's a big, intimidating airport. But in my experience, which I will say is I'm pretty experienced, traveling, there's not another North American airport that moves people as efficiently as Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson.
Nope.
It can be slammed to the gills with TSA lines out the wazoo, and you're probably going to make your flight. You're probably going to be okay. I can't say that about LAX or O'Hare. or JFK. The only other airports that I know of that I've experienced that compare are like Schiphol in Amsterdam, or maybe Gatwick or whatever. But man, and living here, it's nice because I get to fly direct everywhere. We don't have to connect. I don't do connecting flights. It's super nice. I'm really spoiled in that way. And to be honest with you, it sounds weird maybe to some people, but when you travel, your listeners who travel a lot, I think, will understand what I'm saying. When you fly a lot and you travel, that's a serious consideration for a place to live, because if we did move to Nashville, that would be a dozen or more times a year where I'm having to
fly to Atlanta first.
Yeah, I'm have to fly back to Atlanta to fly to Vegas or whatever, as an example. So yeah, it's a thing, man. I'm learning to love this area.
Yeah, one of the things I missed from living in further South Mississippi was my proximity to Louis Armstrong, the New Orleans airport, and being able to grab that direct flight to Chicago, that direct flight to, actually it was most of the time it was Chicago, but wherever I was going. And I miss that because, I'm lucky in my tiny little podunk town of Mississippi. Because I'm in a college university town, and it's a big one, Mississippi State University is here. So there's, there's coaches and players and staff and faculty flying out all the time. So we've got a pretty decent little one terminal regional airport that flies like 5 times a day. to Atlanta.
Yeah,
That's
dude.
what they do. That's what we do. We take that little rock hopper, that little puddle jumper over to Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we get anywhere we want to go.
So for Fretboard Summit, like, because I haven't been to Chicago in a few years. And the last time I went to Chicago, we were on tour, so we drove there. And so I haven't flown into Chicago in probably, 10 years maybe.
Yeah.
And we flew in for Fretboard Summit. And honestly, from my front door, and I live on the other end of Atlanta from the airport. It takes me without traffic, it takes me 45 minutes to get to the airport from my front door. But we left the house and landed in Chicago collecting our bags in less time than it takes me to drive to Nashville. It was about 3.5 hours from front door to landing in Chicago. About 4 hours. And, that's valuable, man.
You had texted me when you were getting on the plane to head to Fretboard Summit. And I was like, oh, awesome. And I knew that y'all were going to try to catch a Cubs game while you were in town.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize y'all were getting there early enough to catch the evening game that day you were leaving. I was like, man, that must be nice. No, if I'm going to anywhere by air, that's a whole day situation. Like I'm flying to Massachusetts next week, and that is a whole, especially because I'm flying not just have to go to Atlanta, but then I'm also flying to a small town. I'm not flying to Boston. I'm flying to Hartford, Connecticut, so I can drive up. I'm going to Springfield, Massachusetts, which is on the other, back ass end of Massachusetts. And so it's a whole day of travel to do that, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, man.
I miss living in a town or close enough to a major airport.
I mean, we're here.
Yeah, exactly.
City's not going anywhere.
So you brought up Fretboard Summit, though, and that was sort of what we wanted to talk about this week. Is both of us were in Chicago for Fretboard Summit. This was my third one technically, though it is only my second as like a full blown attendee. For those of you that are familiar with Barry, sponsor of the podcast over at Grez Guitars. You've already heard me talk about that in the pre-thing. Go click the links. Go check out the new Grand Tour that he put out that I pushed him to make. I will forever own that guitar exists.
Yeah, I played that guitar. It was sick.
Yeah, that one's actually mine. I can't take it home until he builds a couple of more protos. So, but I'm waiting for it. I'm really excited about that guitar. I'll have Barry on to talk more about it here soon. But this is your first time going to Fretboard Summit.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I was there 2 years ago while it was happening. We, my band Good Trouble, we were playing a few shows up there.
Oh, that's right. Y'all were opening for who was it? Wallflowers?
No. It was some shit. Who was it?
I remember.
Little Big Town, I think.
Oh, that's right. So
yeah, that was back when we still had this booking agent that was putting us on like these pop country acts.
Yeah,
and that band, Good Trouble, we're a rock band, and it didn't really work. But we were up there, and I remember like getting into town and I was like, oh shit, Josh is here, Josh Scott, and so I texted him. I was like, hey man, let's hang out. He's like, I'm at this Fretboard Summit thing. I was like, oh wait, I didn't know that was happening, and I just couldn't make it out there. But yeah. So this was my first year, and dude, it's the best guitar event I have been to.
100%. And that was my first experience too. I happened to be in Chicago the same weekend it was happening. I went up to hang out with my buddy Scott from the Effects Loop podcast. And Kelly and I drove up to go see, we're just going to hang out, spend a weekend in Chicago. And we were going to go to see Ariel Posen at Shuba's. Right. Great weekend. And Barry said, hey, it's this weekend, I'm going to be there. And they give me a guest as a vendor. Do you want to come just hang out for a couple hours on the Saturday of it, which is the last day that year? And I was like, yeah, I'll come over. I was like, I don't have a lot of time because basically any time doing that was stealing vacation away from, Kelly and doing everything else. So I was like, yeah, I can come over for a couple hours. And just in those couple of hours hanging around, talking to the folks in that room, I was like, I am going to come back here and I'm never going to miss this event.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way. I'm not going to miss another one if I can help it. They've already got the schedule up for next year, and I've blocked it off for 12 months from now. It's something that I will look forward to. NAMM has always been my big, in this world, my big event to look forward to, because for what I do, it's the one time a year that all the other guitar, YouTubers and podcasters, we all come together and get to like hang out, and it's a big community event. But it's overwhelming. And for the last week, I've been telling people about Fretboard Summit and comparing it to NAMM, where NAMM has this sense of desperation about it, where it's incredibly loud, it's stressful, it's huge. The people that are there are paying a shit ton of money to be there.
Yep.
And there's this desperateness between, you know, the vendors and then the content creators that are there, and like, I'm going to shoot all my content for the next 3 months while I'm here, and
It's so ridiculous.
There's just this weird energy around it. And my response to NAMM the past few years has been to go into NAMM saying, I'm not doing anything. I'm not shooting a video. I'm not doing anything other than being here, because it's just too much to try and, you know.
Yep.
Fretboard Summit was the polar opposite. It was relaxed. All of the builders and vendors that were there was a sense of community that I've not experienced at NAMM or any of these other type of things, where multiple times over the weekend, I was part of conversations or heard conversations of people that were like trying to solve problems, bigger, more established builders trying to help out the newer, smaller builders that were just starting to figure it out. People that were like in direct competition with them, other guitar builders talking to other guitar builders. It's like, didn't matter. They were trying to help each other. I had a few really cool meetings with people that are like doing really interesting stuff in our space that are trying to solve real problems. It is a true community event. And I walked away from it feeling like actually inspired to go and play a guitar and get into the stuff, like dive in. The players that were there, you know, Jonathan Stout, Adam Levy, Blake Mills, like it, dude, it's just, yeah, it's the best.
I went to see Colin Hay, and obviously I knew the hits from Men at Work, right? Holy shit, he blew my mind. He absolutely blew my mind. And unfortunately, it was at the exact same time slot as Adam Levy's show with
Adam and Rich Hinman.
I
will say you missed.
I did. I know.
You missed
I had to make a choice,
set, man.
And I hate that I did. I hate it that I had to make that choice. I did come over there and talk to Adam for a little bit after that set, though, and I bought a record and the whole 9 yards. But the beauty of an event like Fretboard Summit, I love that, like, you can see super weird things like Duncan's guitar that you just did a video on that makes zero flipping sense. I don't understand a thing about that instrument, but I know that he makes it make the most beautiful noise that I have ever heard.
Yeah.
Or you have like my buddy Justin Motander Jones, who during the science fair, he has this wild guitar. He sent me one of the protos to try for a little while. I did a Instagram reel. I told him, dude, I don't even know how to do a video on this guitar. It has an Arduino computer inside of it that controls the switching and the phase of the pickups and creates analog tremolo and phase shifting and univibe by shifting the pickups and the phase at presets. Or now he's got this new device that's like a no mod tremolo vibrato thing that you can just add to a Telecaster. It's fitted for a Telecaster plate, and those has a place at some place like Fretboard Summit where they would just be buried at a NAMM.
Yeah, NAMM, it's tough, man, because NAMM, it costs a lot of money to be there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of builders or vendors feel that they need to be there. And we've all seen the thing at NAMM where there's like the small builder who got a small booth at the edge of the room, and they're kind of in a weird spot, and people aren't really engaging with them. And you can kind of just see them standing there like they spent thousands of dollars to be here.
Right.
And Fretboard Summit is just not that. Like everyone that was there, it's yeah, man, the sense of community, the vibe overall, the people that were there attending, that's all I want to do now.
Yeah. Everyone's a friend. Like,
yeah,
that person that you just wandered up to and started talking to at the bar, that's going to be your new best friend by the end of the weekend.
Yeah. I had a lot of really cool conversations with people, you know, that came up and either watched my channel or you know, were fans of the Dipped in Tone or whatever, and meeting some players that I've been following for a long time, getting to see them in person and talk to them was really cool. It just is the best event. in the guitar space that I have been to. And shameless plug, and I should point out, I have no affiliation. There's no business connection or anything like that with Fretboard.
Me either. I hosted a panel. This year, the pedal panel, moderated it. I paid full price to be there. Just full for the record, full disclosure, I paid full ticket price to be there. And I still ended up doing things because I believe in the Fretboard Summit so much and what Jason has built.
Yeah, man.
And that community, it has meant more. So when I went that first year in 2022, podcast was still real small. Don't get me wrong, it's still pretty small, but that's okay. But last year, and the people I met and the connections I made were so massive for not just the podcast, but just me as a person and getting to meet some of these people, some of the players that you have just unchecked access to. Ben Harper's just wandering around hanging out like a dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then even from the Bob Taylor was there all weekend.
Yep.
Just wandering around. Or Andy Powers, from the CEO of Taylor and Powers Electric and everything. I had lunch with Andy. Or Eli from Two Rock. Eli and my wife Tilly and I hung out basically all week and just had the best time together. My friends from Driftwood Guitars, Chris and Matt, came up from Florida. And dude, it was just it's like being at summer camp. You're there with all your friends and you're around guitars and guitar stuff. We all watched Blake Mills play. I got to see Blake Mills earlier this year with Pino Palladino. They came through Atlanta, and that was genuinely one of the best musical experiences of my life, watching that set. And then I saw him just play by himself at Fretboard Summit, and it was this guy, once in a generation talent. And I'm in a room with 300 people maybe watching him play, and he's kind of just figuring it out. He said something about, I haven't played, most of these songs have never been played live, and I'm just kind of trying them out. You don't get that kind of thing in a normal show environment. You definitely don't get that kind of thing around NAMM.
No,
you don't get that kind of thing around some of these bigger events. It's a special place.
Well, it helps that there's no drums at Fretboard Summit. So
that's true.
See, and that's the thing about NAMM is so I was at NAMM this past year. I know you were. We never connected. That's how insane the entire floor space is. I never even came across you. And there are tons of friends I never even got a chance to come across. Whereas in Fretboard Summit, you're packed into this that's why I love Fretboard Summit, why it's so small. Listeners, I know that we're waxing on and on about this, and you're going to hear a lot more about it over the next year. But so there are links below. I'm sure I mentioned this in the pre-episode. If I didn't, there are links below to register for next year already. It is a relatively expensive event, but there are only X number of tickets available. This doesn't grow where, now we can have 1,500 people. Now we can have 2,000. No,
they can't. If they did that, it would lose the soul of the event. Yep. And I think Jason from Fretboard Journal knows that.
I do too.
I will tell you, go. If you have the means, you have the time, you have the ability, go to Fretboard Summit next year.
If you think it's just an acoustic event, which I know some people did, it is not.
No.
It is a lot of that. Don't get me wrong. That very first one where I was there for 2 hours, I got to sit and chat with Dana Bourgeois for 20 minutes. And it was one of the coolest moments ever because I've been a fan of his guitars for the longest time. But I also, that last year, I met Zachary Vex. I met the guy who pioneered the boutique industry, the guy who walked into a store when trying to price his pedals and said, "What's the most expensive pedal you sell? Make it more than that." I love that story. But it's this really cool camaraderie. Yes, there's a ton of crazy acoustics. It may be the only guitar event you ever go to where Collings is one of the affordable models that's there. I love to say there was an event with I'm never gonna remember them. TJ Thompson. There was another builder that I can't remember, and then Nully from Collings, who's been on the podcast. And I was looking at that panel, and I was like, Nully makes the most affordable guitars by a long shot of the three people on this stage, and They make, and they just hand them to you. Like, here, try this. They don't care. They're just like, there was a $30,000 bourgeois, and they're like, oh, you should check this out. Here, check this, play this. This episode is brought to you by the supporters of 40 Watt Podcast over on Patreon. Go over to patreon.com/40 Watt Podcast, where for as little as $3 per month, you can help support the podcast and get every episode ad-free. For $5 a month, you'll get every episode ad-free, as well as a bonus episode every week. I can't overstate how thankful I am for the support of my patrons, and hope you'll consider joining the team and helping keep this show on the road.
Well, that's like my friend Chris from Driftwood, Chris Alvarado, which, quick shout out and plug, Driftwood Guitars on YouTube. Go follow them.
Yeah. They're a great channel.
Chris is one of those builders. I mean, his guitars, I think, start in the $20,000 range. Yeah. He builds 12 guitars a year, and he's got a wait list. I've known Chris since I was 16, which is a weird story. Driftwood is from Destin, Florida. If you're from the Atlanta area, you always grew up going to the beach in Destin. That's like all the Atlanta people go to Destin.
Not just Atlanta. That's a Mississippi,
yeah,
Alabama.
It's the Southeastern. It's like the Hamptons or whatever, the Southeast, So when I was in high school, I was 15, 16 years old, we would go down, and Chris is a great musician and would gig out around there. This is 2005, 2006. And we were at my dad and I went out to this like blues bar thing at our resort and saw Chris play, and we connected with him. And, we've been friends ever since and kept in touch. And it's been really cool because at that time when I was 16, he had just built his first acoustic for himself, his first Driftwood. And now he's like an established luthier, established builder with a real business, and is building these super high-end acoustics. And it was cool to see him there at the event. They weren't showing. Driftwood wasn't there. They might be next year. I don't know. But like, it was just cool to see people like that in the same space as Bob Taylor. And Chris and Bob Taylor know each other, and they're like talking about stuff like they've known each other for years, which they have at this point. And that doesn't happen at NAMM. You don't have Bob Taylor hanging out on the NAMM floor for hours and hours for 2 or 3 days, chatting it up with like some of the more boutique builders up there, talking shop. But that does happen at this Fretboard Summit event. And man, I've just never seen anything quite like it.
It's really special. It's really unique, and I think Jason really sees that, and he knows that, and it's going to be that way. To give you an idea, listeners, of how curated this event is, they turned away vendors.
Mm-hmm.
They got to a point where they were full, and instead, like I have planned professional conferences. I've run exhibit halls, and it is usually fit every single one you possibly can, whether that's in hallways or stairwells, whatever you need to do, because that is what funds the event more than the ticket sales. It is the exhibit hall, the exhibitors, the vendors that are arriving. And Jason's like, yeah, they're important. And we have some that have been here for there's been 5 of them, 2 pre-COVID and 3 post. But Jason's also understands that there's a point where it's not this event anymore. If we overcrowd this, and then you get really cool opportunities. Like, I know the room I spent the most time in, because that's just where I ended up hanging out with folks, is that I hang out in the room where Mark from summer school, and also Mark and Sean from Scythe Guitars, and Charles from Silk Tone, and I'm shouting out all these people because I love all these people, and they're all of my new best friends. Courtney and Dan.
Brown was in there too.
Yep. David and Ben from Brown. John Anthony from Voltic. I'm trying to get them all, so I don't feel bad for leaving someone out. Maynard from Madsen Amps. You also had Ryan and Shane from Aviate Audio.
Yep.
Is that everybody? I think I've got everybody.
There's that acoustic in there too. That acoustic electric thing in the Brown booth.
Oh yeah, what was Bruce Guitars?
Yes.
Oh my
dude, that thing was nuts. Did you play that thing?
It broke my brain. Like the neck, it was the neck pickup sound on that guitar. It absolutely broke my brain. I felt so bad sitting there talking to David Brown, and all I could talk about was this guitar. I couldn't even talk about his pedals because the guitar was that special.
Yeah. Well, I bought the Silktone Overdrive from Charles while we were in there, you know,
I
hanging
did too.
out. And
I bought the Overdrive and
that's
the Fuzz.
what's cool about this thing is like all the stuff's for sale, which also doesn't happen in NAMM because NAMM's too big and the tax implications and everything. You can't buy stuff at the booths, but in Fretboard Summit, it's like, man, if you like something, you should buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
Off the booth.
Oh, I love that. I've been trolling him a little today. Mark from summer school made that ridiculous report card for
that thing was rad
for the science fair, and it was like a overdrive. No, I'm sorry, it was a boost, an overdrive, a distortion, and a fuzz, all just on like one volume knob. And you just hit as many switches as
foot switch. And you just step on all 5 or whatever, however many you wanted at the time. You would just put your foot however far up on the pedal to step on them. Really fun design. He was like, well, we made this one. And I was like, dude, just, I don't know, maybe make these. Sell them.
So somebody bought that one like immediately after, like just bought it. And it was at like a ridiculous price because it's a stupid thing. Mark's like, I'm not making these.
Yeah.
It was a one-off. And then enough people badgered him that he created a QR code to pre-order. And he priced it at his FU. I don't want to make this price.
Wait,
yeah,
I'm gonna look it up.
There's a pre-order. It's open till Sunday. It is open till this Sunday as we're recording. Which actually, as we release this episode, it should still be up. He priced it at an FU. I don't want to make this $500, and he started getting pre-orders for it.
Oh my god, I need to find this link. Where is this? Because I think I want to try and get one because it would make such a great video, man. Like,
oh yeah. Well, hold on. Let me
total YouTuber brain here.
I'll send you immediately after
I got
this.
it.
Oh, you got it?
$4.99, dude. Yeah. This is the FU price.
It says FU. I don't want to make this price.
That's awesome.
I
love that, dude. It's like, yeah, why not? Why not?
Yeah. So at NAMM, he also had these little 3D printed business card holders that were also a boost pedal.
Oh, and yeah.
He called it his business boost. And he also priced those at an FU. I don't want to make this because like the 3D printed enclosure that he used takes like 5 hours to make on the 3D printer they have.
I should shout out Tyler from Acorn Amps, another Atlanta company. They do a lot of dude, their pedals are, have you seen their pedals online?
Yes.
The Epstein, there was the Epstein, did
boost.
Kill himself. And when you turn it on, the light says didn't kill himself thing.
He just doesn't care. He also did Tyler, he did the decade in a box.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, Tyler's amazing. He helped me out with my 388. Acorn Amps they're the shit. They're so cool. Yeah.
Tyler and I have been talking. He's got to come on the show.
His business card he gave me is a PCB that is an amp circuit. Like it's an actual, like, I think it's a preamp circuit, and it has I think
it's a full-fledged amp. I've got it. It's around here somewhere. Yeah. I'm gonna build it. It's
literally like it tells you what parts to get, and it shows you where they go, and you just drop the parts on the board, and then you literally have a little amp circuit thing in his business card. It's so sick.
It's so great. Actually been talking to. I haven't been talking to someone else I'm working with on a project. Has been talking to Tyler. We're gonna see if that comes out. I'll talk about it more on the podcast at some point, but. That's the beauty of this of Fretboard Summit though, is like these weird wacky things, like at the science fair thing, right? This dude walks up and he's like, I'm gonna be the most anticlimactic science fair thing here because everything else was weird and wacky and wonderful, right? And he says, do you have old Dunlop and MXR pedals?
Oh, I saw that guy.
That don't have a power jack and you don't want to drill into them?
Yeah.
Hey, here's a plastic liner to put between your pedal and the back that just puts a pass-through for power. I was like...
Yeah. So picture a gasket, right?
Yep.
Like a head gasket or whatever. That's plastic, that's 3D printed plastic that has a pass-through for a 9-volt to... like a Boss pedal connector to a 9-volt battery connector. And he has a bunch of them for different pedals that don't have 9-volt jacks. So you can literally take, if you have a fuzz face, for example, or a vintage MXR pedal, people have been drilling holes in those enclosures for years to try and make them pedal board compatible. And he's like, oh, I just had this idea and I make them. And like, again, that's the thing at NAMM, that guy is going to be in a small booth on the very end of the show with nobody really engaging with his booth. Nobody's going to really talk to him because it's kind of a weird, like it's not a product that like really jumps out and grabs you as you're walking by it. But at Fretboard Summit, there's a whole event called Science Fair, which is it's hosted by Josh Scott and his comedic genius. And it's all about highlighting people that have these crazy, weird, off the wall ideas that are actually genius.
Yeah. And let's be honest. I mean, you're very polite saying he'd be in the back corner. That guy's never getting a booth at NAMM.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Cause like, why would you spend the thousands of dollars to go out? Cause he's mentioned in his presentation, like this is something he just does on the side for people that like want to do it. Like he's got a full-time job and a career and everything. Like there's no space for people like that at NAMM, but they're doing genuinely cool stuff for the guitar community that deserve to be seen and heard, you know, and highlighted. So yeah, man.
Yeah, it's I think that's the biggest key. And as such, it feels like an overused word nowadays is the whole community thing. But that's what all of Fretboard Summit is about. It's about hanging out with folks, and then like at 11:30, you're like, oh, it's almost lunchtime. Do you want to go grab something to eat? And you walk down the street, and you have there's a really great sushi place that's like 2 doors or like 4 doors down. That was really, really great. And it's the greatest group of people. I've met more people who have just become friends that make some of the coolest stuff on the planet. Hanging out with, this is the episode where I'm like want to shout out everyone that I hung out with, and for those of you that I hung out with, I love you all. And if I don't shout you out, it's just because this would just become like reading through the book of Numbers in the Bible, where you're just so and so begat so and so and so. Anyway, but it's the hangout, it's the looseness of it, it's the friendliness of like you said, being able to buy things on the spot. Like, hey, that's really rad, I want that. And they're like, okay, here it is, you can have it. Like, you can buy this right now. And usually there's a special price for Fretboard Summit folks. And I don't know, I won't miss it. That's my new rule. I will miss NAMM. I will miss whatever other guitar event you want to name. I'm going to be in Chicago in August every year to go to this event.
And it's the perfect time to be in Chicago too.
Oh yeah.
It's like, right now is when you want to be there, man.
It was nice and cool most of the days we were there. It did get a little warm there on the last day. But I don't know. I don't know how to continue to talk about it without just repeating myself.
I mean, there were some cool things that jumped out to me there.
So let's do that. Actually, you just reminded me. I did have 3 questions. So what was your favorite thing, period, you found at Fretboard Summit?
Well, definitely Duncan Price's Sustainer guitar.
Yeah.
Both of them. I've been following him on Instagram for maybe about a year now. And I've seen these weird things that he does. I know about, you know, Blake Mills plays one of his guitars. He played it on the Grammys. If you watch the Grammys performance of Blake Mills playing with Joni Mitchell, he's playing the guitar that Duncan Price built, that Duncan built for himself, that Blake just sort of, I think that the story that I got was it kind of got commandeered, basically.
Yeah.
You know, and so getting to play, if you're not aware, Duncan Price is this genius guy from Michigan, I think, right? The UP?
I think so.
Yeah.
I believe.
And he builds these fretless polyphonic Sustainer guitars. He's built 2 of them, or 3 of them, I guess, technically.
I'm going to link his Instagram down below.
Disco BB on Instagram.
Yeah,
Disco with a
BB.
K. And dude, I got to play both of them. I made a video about them on my YouTube channel, but the pug, as I called it, because it has like a Polaroid picture of a pug taped to the top, is you cannot play normal guitar like that thing. It doesn't do normal guitar stuff. It's a polyphonic Sustainer. So every string has its own Sustainer circuit. There's a toggle switch for each individual string that lets you go from off to the fundamental. So if you've ever used an EBO, you know how you have like the 3-way switch where one switch is basically the fundamental note. The other switch pulls out like a harmonic, like a second or third order harmonic. So he's got that, but on each individual string. So what you can do is maybe have 4 of the strings sustaining and 2 of them off, or 3 of them sustaining, but 2 of them are harmonic sustaining and 1 of them is fundamental, or whatever combination you want. and then also it's fretless. So you
Yeah.
have like, you put it in open tuning, like open E, and you just start finding these chords, and then you tap basically with your other hand and start pulling melody lines out of it. And you essentially have a 6-voice polyphonic synthesizer guitar that's completely analog and like not a synth. It's unlike anything I've ever played ever.
And the wildest thing about it is that because of the way the sustainers work, and listeners, on top of that, there's a reverb tank.
Yeah, one of them has a spring reverb tank built into it.
And you can play just the reverb tank and not the strings of the... It's the weirdest thing. And so, like, you can flip on a pickup for one of the strings and then not play that string and get the sympathetic vibrations to create this whole other experience. It is instant ambient music without a single pedal.
It's truly... Now, he is quick to point out he's not the first person to do this, which is, he's right. You know, Moog had the Moog guitar 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah, good luck finding one of those.
You can't. I have been trying to find one to make a video about for a year. He and I talked about this. You can't find them. And when you do, they're insanely expensive. People don't play them because you had to use specific strings from Moog, which you can't get anymore. Right. And they didn't make any extra parts for those guitars. And there was like a volume pedal that came with it. There's all this stuff that came with it. So people are afraid to use them because there's no replacement parts for them, and they'll never make them. So they're essentially quote unquote useless. The Moog guitar is not a viable option. Yeah,
to give listeners an idea, there is, as of recording, there is one available that I see on Reverb.
It's like $6,000
from Atomic Music for $6,000.
Yeah, I looked at that one, and I contemplate. It's been up there for a while, and I've been wanting to make this video for a while. And I was like, man, do I just do it? Do I just pull the trigger and buy this thing for the video? But I talked to Duncan about it, and he said, no, man, don't, because you can't get parts for them. You can't get anything for them. So there's just no point in you really even having one. No. And it's not fretless. That's the other thing. His thing is the sustainer circuit combined with the fretless thing.
Buy a $6,000 unobtainium guitar and then pull the frets. I love this idea. It's not for me.
Yeah.
Look, listeners, I know y'all know I have bougie taste in gear, but I can't do it.
Yeah. So that was a really cool thing. Other things that stuck out to me, I got to play Frank Brothers guitar for the first time, which, if anyone here listens to Dipped in Tone, my podcast with Zach from Mythos, I have talked shit about those guitars before. Strictly from an aesthetic point of view, I will say I've been always clear to say that I think they're probably beautifully made and sounding guitars, which they are. But I got to play a Frank Brothers for the first time. That was they're great. They're really great.
I will say that's a guitar similar to the Gibson Theodore that once I saw it in person, I was like, oh, I sort of get this now. It's still maybe not my vibe, but I get it now.
Yeah. Yeah. That was really cool. Matt Ike from Mule debuted the Charlie Parr.
He had those wood-bodied ones.
Oh my God, dude, that thing was special. The Charlie Parr Mule, his first wood-bodied resonator that Mule has done. That was super cool. The Silk Tone, I got to play Charles's amp, the single-ended KT88.
Yeah, is that the Parallel 25 that he makes?
Yeah, that thing was really cool.
He and I have already started talking about getting one.
Single-ended. I was like, but there's two KT88s in it. He's like, yeah, but it's single-ended. He's like, yeah. How does that work? And he explained it to me, and I'm not an amp tech, so I didn't get it.
It's way over my head. Charles is a flippin' genius. He did sort of explain, because it also has a 6L6 in it. But the 6L6 is not used as power. It's used to regulate the two KT88s.
Yeah.
In some way that we're at the extent of my knowledge at this point.
I'm already like, okay.
Yeah. But I will tell you that, so I have the Micronaut. I have that little 4-watt, little cube. And I love it. It's adorable. And I have the speaker cab for it. And the only reason I bought the cab for it is because I felt like I needed to have the full set, right?
Yeah.
But I like that the Micronaut as an overdrive pedal more than I like as an amp. So I'll run it in front of an amp. And I even told Charles, I was like, Charles, I'm going to put this thing in a loop switcher. And then I need to. There's a preamp voicing switch on the front. That's one is definitely grittier and louder, and one's more compressed. And I said, can you put that on a foot switch? Can we mod this thing so that's foot switchable? And now it's a 2-stage overdrive that sits on top of my amp, and it's completely ridiculous.
Yeah, nice.
But I'm so here for it.
Yeah.
He's a sick genius. I'll tell you, it was the first time I got to play Scythe guitars.
Dude, yeah, that's right. At that booth, they were right next to Silktone, and
you played the T style that I played,
well,
the Orange Sparkle,
the Jazzmaster.
Oh
or
yeah,
the J style, I guess. Yeah, man, they were damn good.
Yeah,
really, really nice. Necks felt great. Fretwork was super good. You know, it's crazy how many builders there are now that do Fender as good or better than Fender.
I'd say better than Fender. Yeah, I'm just gonna be honest.
Like Shabbat, I'm a big fan of Shabbat guitars. I've got one of their Strats and one of their basses. Like nobody does fretwork better than Avi Shabbat from the factory. Period. If you have the chance to play a Shabbat, pull it off the wall and look at the frets, look at the fret ends. No builder that I have encountered does better fretwork than Shabbat does. It's crazy.
Yeah, those from Scythe, I played that T style the most because I'll be honest, I keep trying to like Jazzmaster style guitars and Jazzmasters. I've gone through a few at this point, and I just, you know what? I have my Saris J. We've talked about my Saris J before, and like that's what I want. I want Jazzmaster as sort of aesthetics and the vibrato, but give me P90s. I don't want Jazzmaster pickups.
My Saris J is sort of it is the end all be all Jazzmaster for me. Yeah. I have a Ventera Jazzmaster that I got from Fender that I keep around because with what I do with the YouTube channel, it's useful to have these things around for like when I need a video. If I'm doing a video and I need that thing, I need the Jazzmaster pickup for a video. It's useful to have it around, but it doesn't compare to the Saris J.
Yeah, it doesn't. And not just in like. There's a brightness even when you reduce the pot values, you take away the 1 meg and you go to a 250 or a 500K. There's just like this harshness to Jazzmaster pickups that don't work for me. So I've stopped. So I didn't even pick up one of the Scythe J styles. But I did pick up that Telly style, and I did not want to put that thing down.
Mm-hmm.
It was perfect. And listeners, those of you that give me shit, I'm still going to say the Telecaster is the perfect guitar, even if it's not my primary guitar.
I don't disagree with that.
I think the Telecaster is a perfect guitar, and I think Scythe makes a better one than Fender does.
I'll die on that hill with you. It's not my first choice of guitar for sure, but like if I had to, in fact, I think I even did a video about this, about like if you were going to have one guitar to truly do everything, if you were going to have one electric guitar, I think the Telecaster is the most versatile electric guitar. That or the 335.
Yep, those are my two. Those would always be my two that I picked. Every single day. I know. Listen. I know that some of you are screaming Strat right now. You are screaming it. I can hear it. Like the gnashing of teeth. No.
The Telly is I'll just say it. Telly's a better guitar than Strat.
Every single day.
In every way, it's a better guitar. Yeah. It just is. 100%. I mean, you can, and subjectively, like you can like more Strats more. Totally fine. Like you can be more of a Strat guy or whatever. But I think objectively, as versatility and utilitarian as the Telecaster is, I don't know, man. I think it's the one.
Yeah, I agree. So I had some other questions about Fretboard Summit. So that was your favorite thing. Some of the favorite things.
Yep.
What was besides Duncan's guitar? Because honestly, that's a showstopper instrument, but it's not really fair to call it a guitar.
Well,
it
technically is a guitar, but you don't play it like a guitar.
Yeah. It's a guitar like an upright bass is a bass. Let's be honest. But besides that, what was the wildest takeaway you had besides Duncan's? Because we're not topping that.
Man, wildest?
Wildest thing you experienced there.
There's a guitar player named Jonathan Stout.
Yeah.
From LA. Who does... I've seen him on Instagram. He had been recently popping up on Instagram. He's been on Norm's Rare Guitars YouTube channel. He does the 1930s era swing, Charlie Christian, pre-Charlie Christian style thing, chord melody, chord soloing thing, better than anybody I have seen. Now, I'm not an expert in that field, but I will say, like, he was there. We hung out all weekend, kept running into him. He played a beautiful set on Sunday evening, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
He's incredible, man. He's incredible. He's on Instagram at Campus 5, like, you know, college campus FIVE. That was really cool, man. He's incredibly talented. He has figured out that like 30s swing guitar, big band, Charlie Christian thing so well. And on top of that, he flew from LA with he took on the plane a 31 Gibson L5 and like a 37 Charlie Christian, like original. Like the dude
bravest
flew with
man on the planet.
Dude, props. Absolute. Like, I'm sure he's got him insured and everything, but like,
oh sure,
big props to Jonathan Stout for that.
There's so with guitars like that, there's insured. Sure, you've got the money value covered. That doesn't mean it's replaceable.
They're irreplaceable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he was amazing. And then he let me play the 31, and that guitar is so out of my wheelhouse. Like I don't know what to do with that thing, but you know, I sort of strummed around on it, and you know, I got to hear it with it in my lap and playing around. And then I handed it to him and he played it. And that guitar was really interesting to me. It's an arch top, you know, no pickup, 31 L5. And it was so crazy listening to him play it, standing in front of it. It sounded completely different than holding it and playing it. And it was the most directional guitar I had ever heard, where like I could stand 5 feet away from it and point at the exact spot on the guitar top where the sound was coming from. And it was right where the bridge met the top. And it was like a beam. It was like a laser beam of high end and high mid, where if he like even turned his guitar a little bit left or right, you would lose that high end information. It was built to project, which makes sense because if you think about the context of that time period, is pre-amplification. These guitar players were having to compete with horns and everything, so they needed a guitar that just projected out into the dance hall, basically.
Yeah.
And getting to experience that guitar from someone who knows how to play that guitar in that context was amazing. It was really cool.
He does a particularly convincing Piedmont blues style as well. Which it's not like a thing he does all the time. And I didn't talk to him about it at all, but it was like you'd hear it come out in his playing. And I guess just because I'm familiar with Piedmont blues, and you'd hear it in there because Piedmont blues was sort of like the finger style, like chordal jazz of blues at the time.
Yeah.
And so you hear a lot of that moving bass, the chordal accompaniment, the way it's done. And he would just go into that, and my ears immediately perked up. There were times where I didn't even realize he was in the room, and then all of a sudden I heard like 5 notes and was like, oh, Jonathan's in here.
Yeah.
That happened in the Collings room. I was like,
yeah,
just all of a sudden I heard, and I was like, oh, I need to hear that.
Yeah. That was really cool, man.
So something that jumped out to me, and see if you see this, and as someone who is a blues lick aficionado, as I am, y'all know, blues is my home. You go to a place like NAMM, you go to other guitar shows. I've never been to the Dallas Guitar Festival, but I'm sure it's a very similar experience. You're used to hearing a certain style of playing that you can probably equate. It's usually a higher caliber, but it's essentially going in on a Saturday afternoon to your local guitar center.
Right.
It's just probably at NAMM, it's a slightly higher caliber. But you go to Fretboard Summit and you walk into any given room, you're going to hear playing that, first of all, you're not used to hearing. And you're going to hear so many various styles of guitar playing that it blew my mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just from the people that are there, I mean, you're going to walk into a room, and because it is such a small event, you're going to wander into Rich Hinman or Adam Levy or Blake Mills or Jonathan Stout. You know,
Valerie June, she just came in and hung out in the same room the Silktone and some, Syfe and Summer School guys were, and just hearing her talk, and just because she's such a very different artist as well.
Yeah. So you're going to hear stuff like from the players, from the people, it's and again, like, to bring up the NAMM comparison again, there's this thing that happens at NAMM, and you know it when you see it, but there's a type of person that shows up to NAMM where they think that NAMM is going to be their big break. Like, somebody's going to walk by a booth and hear them just like
they're usually in leather pants,
their asses off, and then be like, "Dude, you're amazing. I gotta offer you an endorsement deal or whatever." And yeah, you just wander by booths and you hear the most egregious, like, shredding, noodly, and it's not just guitar; it's on bass too. You walk by the bass booths and it's like, just, oh my god, it's mind numbing, literally mind numbing. But yeah,
very
Fretboard
much
Summit,
so.
there's like some real hitters there. There's some real players there that are wandering around. And because everybody loves the stuff, everyone's a nerd for the stuff. Yeah, like Adam Levy just walks in and picks up the Charlie Parr mule and starts being Adam Levy on this thing. And you're like, wow, this is amazing.
And all of a sudden just starts accompanying what you were doing just because you happen to be right next to him. And it's the coolest. And y'all, we haven't even talked about, and maybe we will on another episode, we haven't even talked about the fact that you were at the Old Town School of Folk Music, where there's a record collection sale and there's a great archive of music downstairs. I actually asked them if they need a librarian because I would love to work there. Turns out they might, so
nice.
That's a whole other thing. But you're in this great site with these great folks making, they're literally working to progress music. That's why this site is so perfect. And I would be remiss if we ended this episode, as we're getting real close to the hour mark, and not talk about Old Town School of Folk Music and what they're doing for folk music and learning music in Chicago. It's free. They have this incredible music school for free as long as funds last to make it happen. And that's what they do. Like, that's amazing. The week before we were there for Fretboard Summit, like, Roseanne Cash is performing there. And they have a music store on site where you can buy all sorts of really cool instruments. And it may be my favorite place in all of Chicago.
I had never heard of it before.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was about until we got there, basically. Mm-hmm. And I started going between the two different buildings across the street. And I was like, whoa, this place is special. And you learn about the history, how long it's been there since the early 60s, I think.
Yeah. In fact, the main building that has the main theater there, the one where the music store is, the guitar store, that actually used to be a branch of the Chicago Public Library.
Right. I heard that.
Yeah. Until it got sold and they built the SZOLD, SZOLD, branch of the Chicago Public Library on the next block. And then it became, that's why it's called the Old Town School of Folk Music. It actually moved to that location because it's not an old town. That sort of throws some people off.
Right.
So, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, really special place, man. Really, really special place, and that's not something I have seen anywhere else other than Chicago. It's beautiful.
Yeah. It's just one of the coolest experiences. And like I said, if I stop doing the podcast tomorrow, if I had to choose one guitar-focused thing to do ever again, every year, or even just in general one more time, I'm going to pick Fretboard Summit. I'm going to be there every time.
Same. It's special. What Jason from Fretboard Journal has built in the community aspect, keeping it small, keeping it relatable, championing builders, and big and small, like Collings.
Yeah.
Collings deserves to be there. And Taylor and Martin, like, they're still doing the thing. They're still,
Yamaha was there.
Yamaha was there. Like, so it's like you have some bigger vendors, and then you have the one-off people where it's like one guy building 8 guitars a year, and they're $30,000,
and some of those builders are doing wild things with acoustic guitars.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I played a couple of acoustics where I looked at them and was like, what the hell is going on here? You've got some kind of crazy bracing system I've never heard of that you're building these things by hand. It's wild.
Yeah, it's the wildest experience. And I highly recommend everyone goes. So the dates for 2025, so y'all know, are August 21st through the 23rd. Tickets are available. A 3-day pass is $350. And that gets you into all the performances. I know this sounds like an ad. Jason Verlinde has no idea that we're doing this episode until it airs. And I pay full ticket price to go, but you need to buy the 3-day pass. That's going to get you some pretty amazing concerts, at full access to everything. And they serve you food. There was lunch provided.
Yeah,
It's
man.
the wildest thing.
I will second that. I'm not being paid. You know, it's just, you know, it's just the best event. And we even did like the pre-hang event on Thursday night. And
That was
there was
before
a
we even
bike
talked
ride.
about that. Yeah.
We organized a ride and there was music, and me and Josh and Nick got up and played like weird ambient improvised shoegaze shit for an hour. And you know,
great music to drink by. I promise.
It was great music to drink by, you know? So yeah, man, I'll be there. Fretboard Summit 2025.
I want to do the bike ride next year. We've been talking.
You should do it,
talk
man.
more about bikes. We're going to talk.
I'll get you into bikes, dude.
Yeah, let's do that.
If you're interested in bikes, I'll get your ass into bikes.
Yeah, we'll get to chatting. Not on the podcast because nobody wants to hear us talk about bikes. But
I don't know. There's probably 2 people in here. Like,
all of 2
bikes,
people.
Well,
awesome, Rhett. I appreciate you coming on and talking about Fretboard Summit with me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
It's always a blast. Listeners, until next time, be sure to check out Patreon. You can go over to patreon.com/40watt podcast, where, $5 a month gets you extra episodes every week. And I'm going to be around a bunch more. If you are listening to the podcast and you don't subscribe to the YouTube channel, go over to the YouTube channel. I've kind of had some inspiration lately. I got some videos that I've started work on that are going to start popping up over there. I'm hoping to do a lot more of that work. Also may have found a video editor, so I don't have to do the editing anymore, which is going to make it much easier for me to do this. So that's also me saying it out loud so that I have to do it, right? Isn't that how this works?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Until next time, be good to yourselves. Be kind to each other. Make some noise.